Hey there. When Gail asked for me to share with our small group a couple of months ago, I declined because I'm really not a Bible scholar. Mike and Tracy are, but not me. But I got to thinking that it would be really fun for me to share everything that God has done in the way of miracles and blessings and walking me through my grief this first year without Mike. So I agreed to do that. And I don't like being videoed, but Kingsley from the United K said I just had to do it. In fact, he bought a special light for us to do it with. So Kingsley, this is for you. It's against my happiness, though. When I started the presentation, I wanted to actually have Tracy begin because God gave her a really pretty song about her dad. You know, God's always given Tracy songs, and the words are perfect. So I wanted her to sing the song first, and she did. But she didn't record it because she was concerned that we would run out of battery storage because she knows I'm sort of long-winded. And so she only recorded me. And I don't want you to have this, Kingsley, without hearing her song too. So I've asked her to record it at her house. And so you may hear a few dogs and see a few dogs during the recording because we're at Tracy's house. And then it's going to blend to the Hartley's house at our small group. And by the way, I wanted to let you know too that on Thursday morning, after my presentation on Wednesday night, I woke up just remembering about 4 or 5 additional things that God had done. One of them was a huge miracle. And so there's no way I could not share that. So the miracle that I forgot, and how I forgot, I do not know. But Donna, Tracy's mom, came down with the Delta strain of COVID back in September. She was extremely sick, and Tracy and I had to take care of her for like night and day for 3 weeks. She was in my car with 102 fever 2 or 3 times, going back and forth to the ER. But between the two of us, we kept her out of the hospital and off the ventilator. And God protected us, and neither Tracy nor I came down with the COVID, although we'd been just an inch from her for 3 weeks. And no, we are some of the unvaccinated folks. So I just couldn't let this video end without telling you that God really blessed us, and that I cannot believe I forgot that huge miracle. So now, Tracy, it's your time to sing your beautiful song and visit the Hartley house. Thank you.
For 54 years I had an earthly image of my heavenly Father. My dad would say, I love you, my number one daughter. I can hear the Lord saying the same to me. We can all be His number one through eternity. You are God's favorite, He'll pick you first every time. When you draw near to Him, it makes Him light up and shine. You are the apple of His eye. You are God's favorite child. Sometimes it may seem like your life has been a waste. How can God redeem mistake after huge mistake? God's love is bigger than anything that you've done. Can you now believe that your God's number one? You are God's favorite,
because you're the one that wants this recording, and I don't like to be recorded. So anyway, because I love you, Kingsley, tonight's for you. Gail has asked me to share from time to time, and I'm not a Bible scholar. Tracy is and Mike is, but not me. But I can tell stories about what God does, and I'm just fascinated with what He does, and so I enjoy sharing that. And so tonight I wanted to share with you my first year after Mike went to heaven. Now, first of all, you all know that I'm an only child, and I had fabulous parents. I had a great childhood. And there are three things, though, that I think I need to tell you about my childhood before I talk about this past year. And Tracy, I have to apologize to you because you said, you needed to go into the past for character building when you were doing your book. And I didn't understand that, but now tonight I understand that because I feel like I have to tell you these three things so you'll know how I tick. So, first of all, I was a huge baby. I did not like to leave home. I would not go spend the night with my parents. Because I didn't want to say goodbye to them. And it just continued. And when we would go to a funeral, it would be the funeral of my parents' friend, and I didn't even know him, but I'd sit there and cry because I was projecting that it was my mother's funeral or my dad's funeral. And so, I just continued, and like when I grew up and left college, that was traumatic. And then when I was flying back and forth to Savannah, that was traumatic. And the deal was Mother and Daddy would not kiss me or hug me. I just faded away. I just would go get on the plane real quick. And so when I came to Baylor, I'm in my 40s, and I thought, Lord, I need to get some help with this because Mother and Daddy are getting old, and I'm going to have to be thinking and how to do what I need to do when they die, when they get really sick, and so I need your help. So about that time, the father of one of my colleagues at Baylor died. And so I went to the funeral. And the pastor read this poem, and it just stabbed me. It was an aha moment. And it was so important to me that I had this dear lady cross-stitch it.
Wow.
And I have it in my bedroom. And this is what it says. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I'm 1,000 winds that blow. I'm the diamond glints on snow. I'm the sunlight on ripened grain. I'm the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I'm the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circle flight. I'm the soft star that shines at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. And I thought, wow, because when I see God's creation, and when I see a sunset or beautiful clouds or beautiful flower, I think of God. And Mother and Daddy and Mike are with God. So I have God here and Mother and Daddy and Mike right here, and they're with me. And so this poem's right. They did not die. So this is like, to me, life after death on earth.
Yeah.
So it hangs on my bedroom wall, and I guess, Tracy, you'll get it when I Now,
There you go.
the other thing is that I had parents that I could trust, and so I have a very trusting spirit, and so has always been real easy for me to trust God and just to give to God whatever I needed. And an example was when I was a junior in high school, I was in charge of the junior-senior prom. And if you've ever tried to decorate a gymnasium, it is a challenge. But I thought that what we could do would be to have a false ceiling in the gym.
Oh,
And so I had Daddy rig up a flagpole, and I wanted us to have like a maypole. And so we would have streamers of crepe paper going all the way around the gym, because Daddy did a wire all the way around, and then we hung, all the classmates hung these paper streamers, and it was just beautiful. It worked out just perfectly, and I thought, oh, that'd be so neat, because then at the end of the evening, we will all take a streamer and we'll walk around the maypole, and then we're kind of undecorating the gym, you know, at the end of the dance. And so that's what we did, and it was just beautiful, and I was so pleased. And so we worked really hard, and that was like at 5 o'clock on Friday. So then the next morning we went, because we were going to try to cover up all the trophies that are in the entranceway to the gym, and I walked in and my heart just sunk, because the crepe paper had drooped and you couldn't walk into the gym. I mean, your heads would touch the crepe paper. I was horrified. And so the coach who had opened the door for us, because it was at 8 o'clock in the morning, and one of the coaches said he'd be down there with the key. He said, well, Charlotte, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm calling my daddy. So, of course, there are no phones. They're all locked up. So I had to go to the pay telephone down at the end of the block, call Daddy. I said, Daddy, I said, listen, we have an emergency. I said, you need to get down here to the school quickly. I mean, it's really bad. And he said, well, Gal, you know, I said, Daddy, I can't even talk about it. I just need for you to get here. And do not drive 55 miles an hour. It's an emergency. You're allowed to go over the speed limit if it's an emergency. Now, please get here quick, because the time is running out. Because we've got to fix this by 5 o'clock this afternoon. He said, okay. So Daddy got there, and he looked, and he said, oh, yeah, I see that happened. And so anyway, he walks over to the maypole, and he just raises the ring that all this was tied to, and it all rises. And so we have a false ceiling again. And so then I just couldn't believe it. I was so grateful. And then he comes to me and he said, now, Gal, he said, I'm going to come back at, he called me Gal. He said, I'm going to come back at 5 and I'll raise it again, because it's going to droop about 3 more inches. Oh. And I'll raise it again so nobody's head will hit. So we had a beautiful junior senior prom, and this was in my high school annual, and you can see that everybody's got a streamer, and we're walking around, you know. And see, my daddy saved the evening. And so with a dad like that, you know, I just have never had trouble trusting my Heavenly Father, because I could trust my earthly father and my earthly mother. Now, the other thing that was drilled into me as a child was that the cup is always half full. And Daddy would say, anytime there was something that happened that would be negative, he would say, now, Gal, what's the positive on this? What's the positive? And so I would have to come up with what the positive was, you know. And sometimes I could do it just immediately, and then sometimes it'd take me a day or two. A couple of times it'd take me a week or so. But he always, you know, it was such a blessing to me, because I don't think Daddy knew what he was doing, but he was giving me and setting me up for a very blessed life. Because when you look at the positives up here, you're focused on the positives, you don't fret about the negatives down here, because you're thinking about the positives, what happened up here. So one example was, and I don't know why I think of this, because there were thousands of examples through my childhood, but it's about hauling water, and I guess it's because I've been hauling water. But there was a black community that lived about 2 miles further out in the country, and there were 5 families, and they had a well. Well, their well ran dry. And so the one man who knew Daddy came up to the house and said, Mr. Cole, he said, our well is run dry, and he said, I was wondering if I could come and get water from your place instead of having to drive to town to haul water all the way out from town. And Daddy said, well, sure, come on. And so I said, well, Daddy, I can't think of anything real positive about that. I mean, they don't have any water. And he said, well, you don't know the rest of the story. Of course, that's Walter Cronkite time.
Paul Harvey.
And Paul Harvey. Yeah, Paul Harvey. Yeah, Paul Harvey, yeah. So anyway, he said, see, the positive is, he said, I knew there were 4 other families down there, and I told him to tell them that all of them could come. And so all of them are going to have water at our house, and none of them are going to have to drive to town. So that's the positive. And I thought, well, that's good. That's right. And so when I was in college, Mother and Daddy had sold some land that was right behind our house so that I would have enough money to go to college and not have to work. And so the thing about it was, though, Daddy forgot to keep the mineral rights. And so all of a sudden, after they had sold it for about 3 or 4 years, Getty Oil comes with all their trucks right behind our house and starts drilling. Well, Daddy was just horrified because he was so upset with himself that he had not remembered to get the mineral rights. And so, anyway, the well came in, and James, you listening?
Yep.
It was a gusher, and this was in the 60s, but it was coming in at $90,000 a month.
Ooh.
My goodness. And so Daddy was just so sick of it, and Mother and I were okay about it. And I said, Daddy, it's okay, because we weren't supposed to have this money. You know, it's the oil. I mean, it's okay. It's all right. And so I was sort of in hopes, though, that he wouldn't ask me what the positive was. And just all the thing, he said, I've been thinking. He said, if we had gotten that money, he said, the first thing I'd have done would have given your mama a new car. And he said it'd been parked in the driveway, and people would drive by and they'd see that new car, and they knew we didn't have enough money to buy that new car, and they'd see that oil derrick behind the house, and they'd know we had money. And he said, you're liable to have gotten kidnapped. And I said, that's right. And I said, that's good. I'm not going to get kidnapped because we don't have this oil well. And so that was that was a positive. So I've just always thought about, well, so what's the positive, So when I think about this past year, I mean, it's definitely been surreal. Mike and I were constant companions. We just did everything together. I really enjoyed his presence, and even if we didn't talk, I enjoyed being around him. And I knew that God had orchestrated our meeting, and it was just a really neat experience. And we were married for 29 and a half years. So on November 3rd, which was election day, when he developed this very cold foot, very painful foot, I decided we better go to the emergency room, and that was about 9 o'clock that morning. And at that time, it never entered my mind that he would not be coming home with me. And he developed just horrible pain, and the pain just kept really just increasing, and they couldn't find anything to deal with the pain. And then he wound up having a surgical graft, and that didn't work. And then he was told that his leg would have to be amputated above the knee. And then he had a major stroke. And then when I saw him on the ventilator, I realized then that he was probably not coming home with Tracy and me. And so my prayer at that time was, Lord, I need your strength. In my weakness, you're strong. So fill me with your strength, because I've got to be able to handle this and to know what to do. And Tracy and I need wisdom in our programs and our projects, and we need wisdom about finances, and give me your peace. And so just let my life be an honor and a tribute to Mike's. And so you're going to have to do it. And this is what God did. I was so thrilled that he gave Tracy and I enough strength to bounce into church within 28 hours after Mike had gotten his heavenly wings, with smiles on our faces, because I knew people were in shock and nobody would know what to say, nobody know what to do. And so we had to show God's strength. And so we were able to go in and greet everybody and enjoy the service. And then a bunch of us went out to eat, and I used Mike's credit card and paid for everybody. So, because Mike loved to buy everybody's meal. So Mike bought our meal. I had enough strength when on Christmas Day, when I was invited out here to the Hartleys, I walked in and I immediately saw that there were 2 place settings extra, and there should only be 1. And so I had enough strength to say to Gail, I bet Mike's saying, "What's wrong with you, Gail? Can't you count?" Tracy and I had enough strength to greet everybody at the celebration of life and enjoyed meeting everybody. We also had enough breath to speak, and we enjoyed celebrating his life. And when I see David Hartley, and so when you look at a death, it's kind of hard to think of positives about someone's death. But when I look at Mike's, first of all, I know that he is with his Lord and Savior, and he is loving it, just loving it. I know that he's no longer in excruciating pain, because he was in horrible pain. He didn't have to wake up after surgery and see only one leg, and possibly still have pain because of the phantom limb pain that he could have had. Can you imagine wrapping your brain around waking up from anesthesia and you only have one leg? Mm. And the other thing is that he didn't know that Biden stole the election from him. So when you look at that, it makes dealing with grief much easier in my respect. But everybody deals with grief differently, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's very individual. So I just asked God, I said, "You please just walk me through what I need to do, walk me through these grief feelings." And I was thinking as I was praying this, and had just seen Mike go to his Heavenly Father, I sort of envisioned this. I just felt like he was going to be immediately a warrior, a major warrior, and I felt like probably he didn't even go see his mansion. He went straight to the war field over Washington, D.C., and he's probably leading a squadron over there. Because he felt so strongly about, our country. So, about the time that I was praying to God to help me, the phone rings. And I had called Tracy and told her that her dad had his heavenly wings, and probably about 10 minutes later, and I was still just sitting there holding his hand, the phone rings, and I don't recognize the phone number. And I thought, well, I wonder if that's a telemarketer, 6:15 in the morning. So anyway, I picked it up, and I heard, "Hello, Charlotte, Kingsley here." Aww. And I said, "Kingsley, oh wow, how good to hear from you, And Kingsley, I don't remember what I said, and I don't remember what you said, but all I know is this to me was a very special gift, and it represented God's love. Right. And I said, "God, thank you so much for having Kingsley call me at the perfect time, 6 hours away." And I felt like he said, "Just wait and see what else I'm going to do." Mm-hmm. So when I got home 2 or 3 days later, I get in the mail, where is it? This book. And a friend of mine sent this to me, and it says, "You're Never Alone." Well, I'm sure this is a good book, but number one, I don't really like to read, and I know I'm never alone. So I figured I'm not going to force myself to read a book that, I'm okay with this subject. It doesn't bother me. I know I'm not alone. And about 2 days later, I got in the mail this book, Healing After Loss. And I thought, no, I've asked God to help me through this, and so it would be a slap in God's face if I picked up this and read it, because, He's going to do this. So I put that aside too.
We might want to borrow them.
So I went into Mike's office, and of course it was just like it was just, it's always a mess. And so, and his desk was just a mess and everything, but in the middle of his desk is this book. Now this was the book that he gave all of the Gideons when he mentored to them, and every time a new Gideon would come in, he would give them this book for them to take notes on and everything. And so I saw that, and it almost looked like it had a light around it. And I said, no, Lord, remember, I don't journal. I'm not a journalist. Now I'll write a letter, but I'm not a journalist. And so no, I really don't want to do any journaling. And I said, remember that diary I had when I was in the 4th grade? And I said, I wrote in code so nobody understand what I was writing, and then I forgot my code.
Yeah.
And so I felt like the Lord says, just pick it up and write what I tell you. I said, okay. So the first thing he told me to do was, he said, just write what you would like to tell Mike if he calls. And I said, oh, okay. So I got a few pages. And so then when I finished that, he said, okay, prove to those people that have texted you, remember you're not alone, prove to them you're not alone. And I said, well, that'll be easy. I'll just list all of the blessings that you've given me, because if you weren't right by my side, you wouldn't know what I needed. And so here are all the blessings.
Wow.
And then he said, well, he said, after the celebration of life, he said, write down all the miracles at the celebration of life. And there were quite a few, and I shared almost all of them here at our small group, but there was one that just really took my breath away, and I just want to share that with you tonight. Those of you who went, let's see, where is it? Oh, here it is. Went to the celebration. Remember, the church had 3 screens right here. And Gail, yes, that is you right there. And this was the warring angel picture of Mike. And on either side were these crosses. And it had a purple background on it. And I really didn't like those crosses. They just didn't go with, I thought, the theme and what we were trying to do. But it wasn't my church. I didn't know the lady who had put them up there, and so I felt like it was inappropriate for me to say anything. So I thought, well, we'll just have those crosses up there. So that's what I thought. Well, when I sat down, probably a minute before 2, when it started, all of a sudden, on these screens, sunflowers.
Oh my.
And that's what I had wanted. And these happen to be the same sunflower scenes that we use at camp. Now, I didn't have anything to do with that other than I didn't even pray for it. God just knew that I didn't really want those crosses up there. So after the service, I went to the lady who was doing the media and I said, how did you know to put those sunflowers up there? She said, oh, I didn't do it. Somebody else did. I said, well, point her out to me. And so she said, oh, it's Lainey over there. And so anyway, I went over and I said, thanked her. I said, thank you for putting up those sunflowers. I said, that was perfect. That was really what I wanted. And she said, I said, how did you know to do that? And she said, I just thought that we needed to get rid of those crosses and sunflowers would be better. So I said, well,
Wow.
thank you,
Good.
thank you. So then later on, I felt like God said, you remember how you and Mike one year remembered 12 people for Christmas out of the clear blue? And I said, yes. And he said, do that again. So for Christmas, I listed the 12 people that I wanted to honor, and so that's what I did. And so, no, I haven't journaled, but I've just recorded things that I felt like God wanted me to do. So then when somebody asked me, well, how was your year? I would say, well, actually it was really smooth. I really, it was good. Except for the fact that I didn't like Tracy having to have surgery, and I didn't like seeing her in all this pain, but it was a good year. So let's look at this good year. There was only one visitor allowed in the room, so when Tracy came, I had to go not down to the lobby. They wouldn't let you stay in the lobby. I had to go sit out in the car. There were no large funeral gatherings because of COVID, so we couldn't have a funeral. The fire department honor guard couldn't come, and I wanted them to do the last bell service. They couldn't come because they weren't on the road because they'd stopped for the COVID. Tracy and her neighbor had a huge argument, and they usually got along together. But the night before, Tracy is going to Tennessee for